Okay, welcome back to another episode of my podcast on the future of business and technology. And today's topic is using AI to write. And in particular, I am joined by Pete DeLaurentis, who is the founder of TextJam, a text editor that allows humans and AI to jam together. And I guess anyone who's tried to get tools like ChatGPT to write in your style has faced some issues, and it sometimes takes a bit of time. And this is something that TextJam is trying to solve. So we're going to look into this, and I would like to welcome Pete.
Bernard, thank you so much. As someone who's both a writer and a futurist, really admire your work and really excited to talk about TextJam with you. I'm an engineer, a writer, and a founder. And I think that, writing is something so important and vital to us as humans and our, the creativity that we put into it. And as AI is something that starts to really become a bigger part of our world, finding ways to protect that creativity and really continue to make sure people evolve that skill of writing and stay good at it is something I think is really important.
Yeah, I actually couldn't agree more. And I think whenever I write about AI tools and their ability to now write amazing texts for us, I always have the concern that it might actually, in the end, de-skill humans. And I think writing is such an important skill where we express ourselves in a certain way, and it has to be in our voice. So I'm looking forward to diving into this a lot more in a lot more detail. Before we do this, why don't you give us a little background? Whenever I talk to any founder of any company, I'm always intrigued of what was your journey like? How did you get there?
It's certainly been an interesting one. I've been lucky to have a really diverse career working in tech, and so I'm an an engineering leader, and I've actually spent my career focusing on emerging technologies across a pretty broad spectrum. And the common thread has really been around these are technologies that things are just starting to become possible. And how do we, go from that, the possibility exists to it's something that people can meaningfully use out in the world. So examples, the first affordable 3D scanner got to build, and large language model, training large language models that support medical research for companies like Pfizer and Genentech, and also machines that make sustainable fuel from the carbon dioxide that we have way too much of in our air right now. So a very, very diverse set of challenges, but the commonality between them all was this was tech that was just brand new and starting to emerge. And how do we apply that to the world? And how do we do that in a beneficial way? I think that technology is most likely to be beneficial if we're intentional about how we apply it. And I've really tried to focus my career on that.
Yeah, very cool. Lots of leading edge technology that you've worked with, which is a good starting point. Maybe we can look at the problem then, and how would you describe the problem? Because for me, when I look at people using large language models like Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini, they can write for us, but it's very hard to get them to write in our voice and in our tone. And if we don't have this, there's a real danger that we just in the future just have the same sort of AI content that everyone produces. So how do you describe the problem, and what motivated you to work on TextJam?
Well, I think what you just said really resonates with me. And in trying to use AI tools and do writing, and some of the writing that most motivated the building of this tool was some of the writing I did in my work as an engineering leader, writing performance reviews and writing documents. And I found that trying to use tools like ChatGPT, first I had to do like the copy paste dance. So, making it over here, pasting it into my doc, pasting stuff back, and there was a lot of back and forth. But more than that, I found that the AI just kind of wanted to take it over and, kind of like that kid in the group project that just kind of does it all their way and does everything. They wanted to take and kind of redo it all, and getting the AI to actually change what I wanted to change, to understand what I was doing, took a lot of prompting. And I found if I was careful in saying, hey, on the second sentence, and I write a really long prompt describing what I wanted, I could get it to eventually produce the results I was looking for. But it was challenging to do. And I started to wonder, is there a way that we could do some of this prompting behind the scenes for the user and give them a tool that just feels really natural and intuitive, so it can feel fun and effortless instead of really laborious? Because I think everyone I've talked to that has tried to use AI for writing has expressed this frustration with, I don't know if I'm actually saving time, I'm not getting the quality of results I want. And so that really led to some of the innovations behind TextJam.
Okay, so take us through some of the innovations and how is TextJam addressing some of those challenges?
Sure. Well, I got inspired. So I think one of the big questions I started with was, how do we communicate our intent clearly to the tool? Really, all software that we're working with, whether it's 3D modeling software or image software or a text editor, we're using tools to communicate our intent clearly. And the more compact, the easier that is for us, the better. And so I started thinking about, how can we tell the AI what we want to keep and what we want to change? We should be able to write things in our own voice and say, no, these things are good, they're solid. But these other things I'm not sure about yet. Can you help me here? And have that be fluid. And so I actually got inspired by these two everyday items. I'm holding a pen and a pencil. And I started to wonder, could this metaphor of the pen and pencil be something that, could be a way we talk to the AI and tell it our intent? And I don't know if this is a good time, but being able to show, we have a really short 43-second video that kind of shows this pen and pencil in action, that I think might be helpful for the audience to see. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea. Let's run the video.
All right, great. Pressing play.
What's more powerful? The pen, pencil, or an AI magic wand? How about all of them together? Write stuff you want to keep in pen. Draft in pencil and AI can help. Pinch to shrink or grow. Chat with your team and your favorite AIs. And edit together in real time. So, what's more powerful? You.
As you can see, this metaphor of the pen and pencil is a way to tell the AI what you want to keep and what you want to change. And so you can, and actually it also learns from the stuff you've put in pen. So it learns your style. So it tries to style match based on all the pen you've written on your document, to make sure it sounds like you.
So can you give us examples? When you write a document, for example, when would you write something in pen? When would you write it in pencil? And how would you work with a tool?
Yeah, I think the beauty is in our users in our beta, we're seeing different usage patterns. But for me, I tend to like to write things in pen, and I'll reach a place where I'm kind of stuck, and I have the part, I know exactly the words I want to use. I have some other parts where I could use a little help. And I switch over to pencil, do a quick rough draft of what I want in that area. And then I ask the AI to refine it. And it'll go and then try to match that to the style I had in pen and try to really clean it up for me. And so it lets me, when I'm in a feeling of flow and really great words are coming out, I can stay in that place. When I kind of get stuck, it gets me right back on track. And I find that workflow super helpful. I've also seen people generate stuff with AI, then tweak certain sections, mark those in pen, and then kind of regenerate. So seeing a lot of different creative flows, and I think it's really cool when a tool can give people some different possibilities.
So you can use the tool to write. If you like something, you keep it in pen. If you're not too sure, if you're drafting something, you keep it in pencil. How do you then turn the pencil into something different? So this is where the AI comes in, right?
Exactly. So, the AI, if you just, hit the magic wand tool, will go ahead and try its best to clean up the writing in pencil and match it to any writing in pen, try to match it to your style. You also can do something in TextJam called in-place prompting, where you can actually put your prompt like a little red line, little sticker right in the document itself next to the text. And a lot of when you're trying to prompt an AI and tell it how to modify your document and say ChatGPT, a lot of it's just saying where to make the change. And so being able to go and just pop in a little suggestion saying, hey, I would, like this to be about this other, include this topic too, or make this shorter, or say this with a little more dramatic flair. Being able to say those comments right there in the text and then have it take that into account and modify the pencil based on that in-place prompt is super powerful.
Yeah, super interesting. And what sort of AI are you using for this?
Well, that's a
Is
great
this
question.
an LLM that you have built? Are you linking it to other existing LLMs?
Well, the answer is all of them. And so I think, in observing the market and talking to people started to gravitate toward different LLMs that they like to use. They like the style of, and so really, and also they're continuing to advance. So being able to offer our users with one subscription access to all the top AI models currently, I think is really important. And in TextJam, you can actually switch your model whenever you want. So if you want to ask one model what it thinks about your document, then get a second opinion or a third opinion from another model, you can. I think there are some really cool possibilities for custom model creation too. I can talk more about some of those opportunities later in our chat, but I think it's really important that models are going to keep evolving fast. We want to give our customers choices and make sure they have access to all the best models out there.
So what kind of models can you link to right now? So if I'm subscribing to TextJam, what models can I use?
So you'll get all the models from Anthropic, so Claude Sonnet and Opus, Haiku. You can get all the models from ChatGPT, um, all the models from Grok, from open source models like Llama and DeepSeek, locally hosted, which solves some of the privacy concerns. And we really have all the current top models, and as new ones come out, we're continuing to add them into TextJam.
Amazing. And you just choose the model you want to work with?
That's right. You choose the model for the document. TextJam is also a fully collaborative tool, so different people can edit the document together, and they can each pick their own AI they want to help them with content. So you can actually have multiple AIs making suggestions and editing in the document at the same time.
Yeah, I like that idea. And will the AI recognize who you are? Because having worked with a number of those tools, I have asked them or given them my preferences. They've learned them. Would that follow through into TextJam?
I'd love if it did from providers like ChatGPT and Anthropic, because we do, using those tools, put a lot of us into them. Currently, it's not something that they expose, but we are, as you use TextJam and write inside TextJam, learning your style. That data is only available for your use, but we are learning your style and preferences and carrying that forward. But it is a fresh relationship in your work with TextJam. I hope that's something the other models open up in the future, because I think it is super powerful for it to have a lot of context about you.
Yeah, exactly. So, where do you see this model, this tool being used then? So who is your target audience for TextJam?
Great question. I think that, something that's true is that everybody writes, right? And I think that, from knowledge workers, students, writing is such a part of all of our jobs. And as actually AI prompting is becoming increasingly a part of people's work, that's writing in natural language, and so that's also writing. So I think writing is something everybody does, and I think that building a general tool that can be really a home for all your writing, a place you can come that knows about your style, and really has tools that you love to use that make the process of writing feel super fluid and fun. And also a place you can write with your teammates, your friends, your colleagues, your editors. So having this home that different people can come together and write, I think is super important, and it applies to a ton of different vertical applications.
Yeah, I agree. And I played around with your tool for a bit, and I have to say I really like it. I like this whole idea, the whole notion of co-writing with an AI, making sure it captures your voice and expanding on what I want to say. But there are other features, like you can go back in time, you can expand and contract things by pinching the screen. Do you want to take us through some of
Yeah,
those?
I'd love to. Let's start with what you just talked about, that pinch gesture. I think there is a moment in sort of the tech world, when Steve Jobs got up on stage and did like the multi-touch moment, where he talked about these new glass screens that were multi-touch, where you could have these natural gestures. And for me, I always remember that moment as being something very inspiring, that emerging technology can unlock new ways of interacting that haven't existed so far. And if you look at the word processor or document editor, and you look at sort of the history of it, when the mouse became available, it evolved. It changed from WordStar and what was there before it. And suddenly now we have a brain in the word processor. And I think that's at least as significant as the mouse. And so that multi-touch moment that Steve Jobs had about Pinch really inspired me to look at, hey, what could we do with TextJam to allow sort of gestural controls so it feels natural. So you can just really like sculpt words like clay. And so in TextJam, you can actually, on your touchpad, pinch, and it'll actually shrink the text. And it will intelligently come up with text that fits the new length that you gave it, where you can pull your fingers apart and expand it. You can also use arrow keys or drag with your mouse. So lots of ways of doing this. But often in writing, you just want to shorten something to fit on one line, or say, I need a little bit more on this. And so I think a really fluid way to, pinch and pull your document and intelligently grow and shrink it, and I think it's super powerful and fun.
Yeah, no, I like that. And then you have the tool where you can go back in time to different versions.
It's something that becomes really important when you're working with AI. So like when you're using AI, you are taking a bit of a gamble on what it's going to put out, and you're hoping it produces something better than what you had before, and often it does. But being able to try things and kind of fearlessly, and be able to go back in time really easily and say, well, we tried that, but I want to go back to here, really makes it super easy to feel safe experimenting. So that's we call it the time traveler feature. So you can go back to any point in your document. You can also hit the play button and sort of get a really quick play through video of your document, so you can kind of see how things have evolved over time. And that's also useful for attribution, for understanding, in either educational or collaborative settings, what was the process for making this document? How much was AI used? Who was involved and who contributed to this? So being able to, go back in time and sort of watch the process can be super valuable too.
Yeah, very interesting. And I can see applications for this in education. I'm a massive advocate of using AI and co-creating with AI. So the AI is your partner. And for me, this tool embodies that vision perfectly. But what's your view on students? Should they use AI in their writing?
I think that I think it's a balancing act, right? Because we want them to really perfect and learn the skill of writing. We want to let them um, not just rely on something to output stuff for them. We want them to actually, learn to write and
Mm.
persuade and, choose their words carefully and understand their impact. Those are all super, important for their success in the world. So we want the skill to be learned, but they're going to be in the real world writing using AI, because that's the world that we're in now, and that's not going anywhere. And I also think most kids are using these tools right now. And so making sure that they can use AI in a way that's transparent, full transparency, so their professors and teachers can see how they used it and offer advice, and also that encourages them to kind of lead rather than follow. AI can be like that kid in the group project that just takes over and does it all for you. And it's really important that kids aren't having that experience where they, let the AI do most of it because it really wants to take over. So I think that, as someone who has kids in high school age, having a tool that really encourages people to use AI in a responsible way, I think is really important.
Yeah, super interesting. I was speaking to my daughter about this the other day. She's
Yeah.
at university, and her course is all about writing and creativity. So she was quite excited to try that tool and see how it works. And I also like the idea you use the word transparency. I think that is so important too, that the tool helps anyone. If you, for example, if you have a professor and you then have writing projects, students writing with AI, you can then see which parts were human generated, which parts were co-created, which parts were solely AI created, right?
Exactly. So we actually show a summary so you can see the stats on how much AI produced, how much you wrote. You can also, if you want to see the full receipt, you can watch the 15-second video that shows sort of the making of the document, sort of TikTok style. But I think the other part that's really key under the hood to support that is we track attribution for every word that's created, whether it came from AI or you or a collaborator. And we store that in a way where even when you copy paste from one doc in TextJam to another, it's retained. So we have that chain so you can really, reliably know where did this come from.
Yeah, and then similarly to the education world, how do you see this being used at work, for example? How would you sell this to a company, for example?
Well, I think like a lot of SaaS products that have become corporate mainstays really started as people who were excited to use a tool, kind of on their own brought it in. And I do see this following that path. Companies like Slack, this was kind of how they got big. Companies like Figma. Um, but there are tools today like Microsoft Word and Google Docs that are used a lot in a corporate setting, and they're good tools. But one question is how much have these tools changed in the last 5 years? They've largely remained the same, and you might get a button hidden off somewhere on a faraway sidebar, side screen, and really part of the challenge of having a product that's sort of a global standard a lot of people use is you really can't change too many things about the product fundamentally, or the existing user base can feel alienated by that. And so they don't have the same ability to really experiment and try something new. And I think that because AI is such a big sea change in capability, there are things with the tools that fundamentally are possible and make sense now that didn't in the pre-AI world. And so I think it's really it's a good time to rethink, hey, what should a word processor be? How can it help us be both faster and also still protect our voice? So I think that entryway of people discover the tool. It's really easy for a team to collaborate using this tool. It's designed for that, so you can see the other editors. You actually have full Slack style chat in your document, so you can actually chat in real time about the document while you're editing it together. And the AI actually does some interesting things in the group chat. So I will say this is actually the first time I've seen a case where different users can have a group chat with AIs. And the AIs in the group chat are given the job of trying to make sure that the different viewpoints that are offered by the contributors are really, kind of end up in the end document. And so even if someone surfaces a point and then later someone's writing late at night working on it, the AI can, kind of say, hey, remember this person said this, what about this for the document? And so the AI can be that sort of advocate for people, even when they're not there, if people are kind of trying to make a decision or broker a disagreement on an area, that AI can kind of step in and help. So really, it's cool to see this new group chat with AI dynamic. So I think there's a lot of capabilities that are really novel here, that are useful for the workplace. And we have been working on actually a sort of team subscription product. So you can buy one for your corporate enterprise, buy one for your team, and we'll be rolling that out in the months after launch. But people can actually use this today with their corporate email address and start using it for their work.
Okay, can you give us an idea of pricing?
Sure. So we have two packages available now. We have the starter plan, which is a monthly plan that gives you 50,000 AI words, which is about half the length of the movie, the book. It's also a movie, but the book, The Hobbit. Mm-hmm. And then we have our professional plan, which gives you 200,000 words, AI generated words. And those plans offer you the ability to have multiple collaborators working on the document together. You get audiobook quality voices that can narrate your text. So you can kind of hear how it sounds, see how long it takes to say, full dictation, so you can actually talk to your document and turn your stream of consciousness speaking into a first draft you can edit. So all those features are included. And, I think in this AI space, we're trying to find our way. The industry is trying to find its way with pricing models. And currently you have two pricing models in the marketplace. You have the monthly subscription, and then you have for developers, you have token-based usage pricing. And I think the challenge is, some of the companies doing the subscription aren't able to sustainably offer their product at that rate. And then we have the developer understanding what a token is, and input tokens and output tokens. It's too much for, it's hard for someone to figure out what their cost is going to be. It's not consumer-friendly pricing. And so tried to find sort of a middle road. So we have this subscription that gives you a ton of usage, but for people that need more, you can top up with a word pack or a narration pack for another $10 and get a lot more words or narration minutes.
Yeah, very interesting. You talked about, or you mentioned two products, Microsoft Word and Google Docs. They are obviously massive players. These are the tools people are used to for their own writing. How are you planning to penetrate that world?
Yeah, I think there's a certain bar of table stakes features you need to penetrate that world. So that's part of the reason that TextJam is fully collaborative like Google Docs. And I think you also need to not just meet the same bar, you obviously need to go way, way higher in terms of capabilities. And so I think that the writing experience that TextJam offers is distinct in its ability to really benefit from AI, is significantly better there. And in terms of its ability to collaborate with other humans too, the tool offers a lot more capability there as well. And so, I think it starts with someone bringing it to work saying, hey, can we jam in this instead? And then, ends up with sort of the snowball effect of more and more people in the org using it. And I think it's going to be important that we do have, pricing plans for orgs to be able to make sure they can use this affordably at scale, monitor its use and effectiveness. But we're at a time where organizations are looking for ways. They're aware that AI is changing things. They're looking for ways that AI can actually help cut their costs, help them do more. And so being able to have, their team members be more productive is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. What's stopping companies like Microsoft and Google to simply build the features that you've talked about into their own products?
I mean, part of me hopes they do, because I'd love to be able to use these everywhere. But I see a few challenges for them. And, one is this idea that, if you look at how often have these products been changed, they really haven't been changed in a long time. They're very, stable, and part of it's by design. They want to keep the user base happy by not changing things up too much. Also, there's organizational inertia. It is hard at a large org to, really kind of redo things from scratch, change the way a product works. That's hard. But I think because these innovations are new, we do believe that the patents for filing now will be able to get those on these innovations, and that will provide some protection. And also, having invested the engineering effort to build these features, we've learned just how challenging these are to implement, where AIs can stream in these results into a doc that multiple people are editing at the same time. There's a lot of technical challenges under the hood to things like being able to pinch and sculpt words like clay. So I do wish them luck, but I think that it would be a while before we would see these kind of features in Google Docs or Microsoft Word.
So when you reflect on your journey so far, what have been the key challenges for you, and are there any learning points that you could share with anyone else thinking about starting an AI company?
Sure. I think that, we have ideas. You have an idea, hey, what would this actually be like to build? And I do think, today we have new tools for prototyping things with, using AI that can help us get there faster. But I think these ideas we have, sometimes they work and they work great. Sometimes, you could spend a lot of time on something that's not as important. There's a sort of famous quote from one of the leaders at Google X. This is the company that spun out Waymo and, Project Loom, a few different, sort of big bets on technology. And the quote's kind of a silly one, but it's, if you have a juggling monkey on a pedestal, what do you do first? Do you train the monkey, or do you build the pedestal? And you're going to need both to go live, but a lot of companies will focus on building that pedestal, doing what they know how to do. And I think that actually tackling your risks first, figuring out what the monkeys you need to train are, and making sure you're testing those things out. So, at the start of TextJam, really focused on features like this pen and pencil and being able to keep your style, writing using AI, and pinch to resize, the features that are, kind of more novel and really challenging to build, and making sure those work, and then really building out the pedestal, the table stakes features you need, things like collaboration and importing and exporting to different document types, and billing and all that stuff. So that's one piece of advice, is to figure out what makes you unique and novel, and really focus on that. And once you've proven that you have something there, then you can build the pedestal to support it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So if you were to summarize your juggling monkey, or the things that make you unique and makes TextJam stand out, what would you say those features are?
Yeah, I think the sort of landmark features, or the marquee features of TextJam are, the ability to communicate your intent clearly to the AI in terms of, by marking things, and then being able to use that to intelligently generate content that fits with your styles is one key feature. The ability to actually prompt in place and stream edits directly into your document while other people are editing it, that's a really challenging thing to do. It's another marquee feature of TextJam. Lets you avoid that copy-paste dance of going a bunch of different places, because all the action can happen right there in the document. And then, being able to pinch to resize and really scale, and have that be a really responsive, performant feature was also really challenging, and I think is really key to the experience. But the pedestal matters too, and I think one of the things, products are often greater than the sum of their parts. You put enough pieces together, and suddenly they create a whole experience where you can just kind of stay there and hang out. And so bringing in features from Slack into the chat, having the full collaboration features of Google Docs, being able to do forking of your documents sort of GitHub style if you want to spin off another version people can work on. Having all these capabilities in one place kind of changes the game.
Yeah, I can see that. Looking ahead then, where would you like to get to in, let's say, 5 years' time? How do you see this tool evolving? What's your vision, basically?
Yeah. I really want people to be able to create and, continue to up-level people, their skills, continue to become better writers using this tool. And so I'm really interested in innovations that support that. I'm excited about creating a community around this tool. I think that when you have a collaborative tool, being able to work with other AIs, I think is really powerful, but also being able to have other humans included in the process, maybe that match your writing style or interest, I think is really powerful. And I think that, right now we're using off-the-shelf AI models, trying to use all the best models. But I think there's great room for improvement in terms of a specialized model for writing and for writers. And if you look at the advances we're seeing right now with video models, and they're able to do all kinds of, crazy things. And they're advancing at a very rapid clip, but we haven't seen the actual writing capability of these AI models evolve too much, in the last year or so. It seems like they've sort of reached a certain place and sort of stayed there. And it makes sense to me why this might be the case. If you think about it, we've trained these large language models on all the writing on the internet, whether with user consent or not. They've been trained on all the writing on the internet. And if you look at how much of that writing is good writing or great writing, it's not necessarily the majority of it. The other thing we've done with these AI models is we've trained them to be copy machines for that content. So the reward function or loss function for these AI models to train is they're saying, well, hey, did we produce the document that was fed into us? Or are we matching it exactly? And so we're actually teaching it to copy, the majority of the internet's writing. And I think there are two really strong potentials for improving AI models. I think one is just having a curated data set. So training a model on some of the best writing or certain categories of writing, I think has a lot of power. With user consent also, I think that's super important. And then I think the other, thing that is really interesting to explore is, can we actually train models on novelty instead of copying? And so, right now we're trying to copy and match exactly, but what you might want, if you think about like a really great opening to a book, often like you have writing that it's familiar, you understand what they're saying, it's clear, but it's said in sort of a new novel way that just hits a little different and stands out. This is different. This has some new thinking into it. And so, could you train a model where your reward function is really around, does it conceptually match the idea you're going for? That's important. And is it novel? Is it different than the other samples out there? And so kind of flipping the reward function, I think you produce some really interesting models. So very excited to explore those things. Also feel really strongly that user consent for writers is super important. So, any features we do with training in the future will be, with the user's blessing and really opt in. But I think there's a great amount of potential to improve the writing models of today, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, and I like this idea of training AI on actually really interesting and good writing. And I guess you are in a very good position because if lots of people use your tool and you can identify which bits humans wrote and were happy with and that was their voice, this is all unique training data that you could potentially use in the future.
That's right. It's also really important we respect what users are producing, though, and make sure that any models we're producing using that they're credited for in some way, and that they have have the ability to consent into or out of that process. It's super important.
100%. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You've worked with lots of different technologies at the leading edge of a number of different things. I'm always intrigued to get people's view on the future. So if we look 10 years ahead, what are the kind of things that you're really excited about? Or maybe are there any things that you're worried about? What technologies are you really excited about? Paint us a picture of what you see in the next 10 years.
I think we're in for a ride.
Mhm.
I think more than any time in human history, we're going to see a lot of change in these next 10 years. And there's some things I'm pretty sure about. There's some things I think are more, um, I'm less sure of. But I think the one thing I'm really excited about are AI power tools for humans. And so, you know, um, and these might be tools, for scientific discovery, discovering new proteins or medicines or new chemical compounds that bind better to CO2 and help us convert it more efficiently, so we can, help mitigate climate change. Um, or specialized writing models that really help you create great novel content. But I think this idea of power tools for a user, where they're interacting with the tool, they say, let's try this. Their creativity can be channeled into something that can quickly, kind of validate that direction, provide them feedback right there. So they're really driving the AI, and that's sort of like the heart of TextJam too. Is you're really driving this process forward. It's not taking over and doing a bunch of stuff autonomously that you don't have any say in. So I think that area we're already seeing big advancements there, and specialized models in different fields. I think we're going to continue to see more of that. I think that this idea of, it's very hyped right now, of AI agents, kind of taking over and doing all these things autonomously. I think that idea actually has some promise, but also some technological challenges that may be a bit durable. And I think supervised agents, things like Claude Code, where you're kind of approving everything, but it can do a number of operations in its own, are really powerful for agents. I think customer support, where there's sort of a low bar and really a human's guiding it on the other end, the person receiving the tech support. So I think supervised agents are powerful, but with things like Claude Code, 80% of the time the answer is good, 20% of the time the answer is not good. And if I'm not there, it'll quickly drift because error accumulates. And so I think as long as models hallucinate and error accumulates, the idea of things going off and taking actions on their own, I think is a bit concerning. And so I think that the progress there, maybe a bit slower. Another one I'm really excited about is embodied AI. And you're seeing robots becoming a lot cheaper. That technology is advancing quickly. And I think, having AI that is sort of embodied in the real world, able to experience things, able to interact with humans, will grow and advance a lot faster. And so I think that's in the next 10 years, I think we're going to see a lot more robots that we're interacting with. And, we need to be very careful and intentional about how we roll that change out. The last one, I think people are talking a lot about AGI and superintelligence, and maybe like an intelligence explosion where something really takes off. And that's totally possible in the next 10 years. I don't think it's necessarily a given. We've seen in nature that something as complex as our human brain can work. And so us being able to produce something that can sort of do the same level of capability with technology, a different substrate, I think, should be possible. Super intelligence or building something even greater than that, we don't have any examples of nature of what that looks like. And so we don't necessarily know yet, as something becomes, if you think about the line between genius and madness, and sometimes there's, it's kind of a blurry line. We don't know if sort of the capabilities we have right now and sort of our scale, sort of the ideal size for a neural network system. And maybe the big AIs of the future, the super intelligent, just look more like companies of different smaller AIs and work kind of like organizations. But they have their own scaling challenges. So I think there's a lot to be excited about. I think it's really important we're intentional about the technologies we choose to focus our resource on, and hopefully we're choosing things that are really beneficial to core human problems, and meaningfully make the experience of human being better. I think a focus on cost cutting or efficiency, that's not concerned with some of those human things could send us in the wrong direction. But I'm an optimist at heart, and I want to do. I think if we all do our part in the tech sphere to try to focus on those beneficial goals and be intentional, I think we can get to somewhere really good.
Yeah, very well said. And I 100% I'm in complete alignment with all the trends that you've highlighted, all the concerns you've highlighted. Yeah. And I also share this optimistic view. And I believe we can create a much better world by using AI to enhance what we do today and make us better. And the agentic AI is super exciting now. I think embodied AI, especially around humanoid robots, is super exciting. There's lots of stuff happening. So yeah, we are so aligned in this. Thank you very much. That was
Thanks so much.
that was a real pleasure chatting to you today, Pete.
No, this was great.
And I wish you all the best with TextJam. I think it's such a cool idea, and I hope it will be a huge success.
Thanks, Bernard. It's great chatting with you.
Likewise, thank you. And anyone who ever wants to rewatch this, simply head to my YouTube channel where you can watch this conversation and hundreds of others like it. Thank you very much.